Once again, this evening, we have members of our team standing by as we come to the end of our fiscal year, standing by to take your phone calls, 800-225-4008. And I want to first thank all of those listening who have participated with us, partnering with us to make sure that Washington Watch continues and that we end our fiscal year and begin our new fiscal year strong financially. And so we have very generous donors that have put forth $1 million challenge. So in effect, your gift is doubled. Everything you give, every $10 becomes $20, $20, $40, $50 becomes $100. Give us a call, 800-225-4008, or go to the website, tonyperkins.com. All right, as I mentioned, Capitol Hill today, a hearing on the coronavirus, the Trump administration's response, and politics was center stage. But the hypocrisy was quite fascinating to me, taking issue with the president having a rally. There were those, even in the committee, as I mentioned, Congresswoman Eshoo from California, who railed against those who protested stay-at-home orders, but been promoting the protests that have been taking place in streets across America, and then taking issue with the president going to Tulsa this past week. So what did we find out in today's hearing? Any progress made? Well, joining us now to talk about it, Congressman Michael Burgess. He represents the 26th Congressional District of the Lone Star State, and he is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Congressman, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hey, Tony, thank you so much for having me on. So you'll be glad to know that hypocrisy is live and well in our nation's capital, and you saw it on full display during our hearing today.
It really was. In fact, it was fascinating as I watched parts of the hearing. And, of course, they're now doing hearings, virtual hearings, where members are joining by different forms of technology. And I noticed that you have the members have challenges, just as everybody else does, in making it all work. But bottom line, was this just an effort to try to go after the president in this administration's response to the coronavirus?
Yes, and let me tell you why that is so unsettling to me, because I was one of the ones last January who said, I think this is a problem in China, and we got to pay attention to it. I couldn't get our committee that is supposed to be the number one committee that's be front and center for a pandemic, I couldn't get anyone to even talk to me about it in January, February, or the first half of March. We had hearings on everything under the sun except for this. And now we want to convene this hearing today and criticize the president for not being perhaps as on the spot that he should have been. Well, where the heck were we? Chairman Pallone, where the hell were you? I'm sorry. Where the heck was Chairman Pallone during all of this? We had plenty of time in February. We could have gone back and looked at the bill we'd just passed a few months before that was to deal with pandemic and all hazard preparedness. And we didn't even have the curiosity. As this plague was beginning to percolate over in China, we didn't even have the curiosity to bring it up and say, hey, did we get it right? Did we do the right thing? Are we on the right track here? No, let's go on and investigate flavored tobacco or horse racing or whatever else we were after that day.
Yeah, selective memory. In fact, I know you were on this program talking about it back then as well. In fact, I should have, in anticipating you coming on today, should have pulled the clip from back then where you were raising concerns about this. Not an alarmist, but suggesting that we need to be looking at this, that this was a serious threat. As we're into this now, and there are, talks about how we keep this from spreading. In fact, I had an infectious disease doctor on yesterday saying that where we are right now, best way forward, continue the social distancing, keeping our distance from one another, physical distance, keeping using the mask until we get to a point where we have the vaccine widely available. That there's just going to have to be some alteration of how we conduct business and how we do things.
And yes, correct, and our social interactions, and certainly people do need to be mindful of that. May I just point out to you, though, that, and this was really hit home for me today in this hearing that we had, FDA is there front and center, Dr. Fauci is there front and center, things they're talking about were the types of responses I could never get out of the previous administration. Look, we're talking about the FDA is the Project Warp Speed, lots of work being done on vaccines as well as other viral countermeasures, but vaccines gets all the headlines, and appropriately so. But look, we've got several companies that are working on candidate vaccines, and the head of the FDA has said, and we will license the production of this vaccine prior to its approval. Now, there is a risk to that. It is a financial risk for the company that decides to go ahead and proceed with the manufacture before the final approval is given. But on the other side of this, wouldn't it be really wouldn't it be wrong to have a vaccine that finally gets through all the hurdles on the regulatory side, and now we say, yeah, and let's go ahead and start making some of this next week? No, you're going to need it right then and there. The minute it gets the green light, you want it to be available for people. And so this is what companies are standing up to do. This is what the agency now has been forward-leaning into this. Credit Dr. Hahn and credit Dr. Fauci. He made it very, very clear in our hearing today, this is not about taking a risk with people. This is about a company taking a financial risk so that it will be prepared to deliver what the people are going to need when it's finally approved. That's vastly different from what we had, say, in Ebola. August of 2014, we had a candidate vaccine that looked very good. Do you know when it was finally approved? December of 2019. The epidemic was long since done by that point.
You know, Dr. Burgess, it to me, it's quite obvious that this administration, and look, they're not perfect. I've taken issues with some of the things that have done, and of course, in a crisis, you're going to make mistakes, and I can't imagine. In fact, I guess I can because I have conversations with the White House frequently, just the number of balls they have in the air right now and what has happened in the last 4 months. But they don't get credit for any of the positive things that they do. As you pointed out very clearly, the rapid pace which they have moved forward with testing. I mean, remember that was an issue just a couple of months ago. Oh, we don't have enough tests. Now we're at the point we're going to soon be at 40 to 50 million tests a month. I mean, that's pretty significant, is it not?
It's absolutely significant, and it's certainly key for being able to contain, whether it's a continuation of the first wave or the second wave or however we choose to designate it. It's going to be key in containing the illness until such time as you get a vaccine.
So from your perspective, how has the administration, the CDC, the White House, how have they handled this?
Well, I will tell you, and in fact, this may have been part of our conversation earlier, that when the administration stepped forward, and I was really concerned, the end of January, they came and presented to us all of the public health experts that you see repeatedly. I was like, you need to stop travel from China until we figure out what the heck is going on. Well, the president did that. Now, in fact, our hearing today, he was criticized because he didn't block American citizens from coming back in. However, they did quarantine American citizens, and they got criticized for that at the time, for quarantining people for 2 weeks. You're right. It's almost like they can't do anything right. And do remember, they also have 97% negative coverage in most of the news shows except for yours. I mean, it is unbelievable what they've been able to accomplish with the weight, the anchor of the negative press that they have to fend off every single day. Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Burgess, so from today's hearing, and it was a pretty lengthy hearing. In fact, part of it may still be going on. I don't know. It was too long for me to watch the whole thing. I'll put it that way. Anything that you learned new today, or anything that raises concern for you?
Well, I'd say one of the new concepts, and I think Dr. Fauci, and I just referenced this, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Hahn at the FDA both talked about how, there'd be a risk taken with the vaccine, but it'd be financial risk, not people risk. And I don't know that I'd heard it expressed quite in those terms before today. I'm so concerned about the fact that we've got community spread in some parts of Texas. That worries me. I do know that there's no way in the world we can go back to that total lockdown situation that we were in
Yeah.
in March and April. Number one, people just aren't. We're going to lose
It's
the
not gonna
consent of the
happen.
governed here if we're not careful,
Yeah.
because people just aren't going to stand for it. But at the same time, you do worry about people who are at risk and people who are vulnerable. So a lot of my questions were centered around how do we make sure we get in areas where you have community spread, and right now that seems to be in the lower Rio Grande Valley in Texas. How do you ensure that you have the proper amount of personal protective equipment at the level of the nursing home, the congregate facilities, the long-term care facilities? How do you ensure that you have the proper amount of protective equipment so that those populations are not put at greater risk than they already are? And there were some good answers, and I was grateful for the type of work that I think it was Admiral Jouar, who's the principal one who's been involved in that. But yeah, I was encouraged by what I heard from our witnesses today.
Well, we're not out of the woods yet, but we can see some daylight, so it's encouraging. Dr. Burgess, thanks so much. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Absolutely. And do our part. Each of us do our part. As I say, keep our distance, wash our hands, and when necessary, wear a mask. Thanks so much for joining us, Congressman Burgess. Always great to talk with you.